All right, welcome back, everyone. Today, we're diving deep into the Indian wilderness with a figure who's both legendary and a little bit perplexing, Jim Corbett.
Oh, yeah.
We've got this fascinating Hindi language podcast episode lined up. It's called Jim Corbett, Data from Wildlife World, and well, let me tell you, it is packed with stories.
It really is.
That'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about hunters.
Absolutely. Yeah, it challenges the typical image, right? Because Corbett was, well, he was a skilled hunter.
Yeah.
Taking down these man-eating tigers and leopards. But he also had this profound respect for animals.
Yeah.
And the environment. It's interesting.
Okay, so right away we've got this intriguing paradox.
Yeah.
He's not just some trophy hunter, right?
No, absolutely not. Corbett firmly believed that these animals only became man-eaters out of sheer desperation, injury, or habitat loss. Something was pushing them to this extreme.
So how did that belief actually play out in his hunting methods?
Well, it's what made him so unique. Instead of just going in, guns blazing, he was meticulous.
Right.
He would spend weeks studying the animals' movements, talk to local villagers, really trying to understand the why behind these attacks. He even looked at the tracks, I think they were called pug marks,
Okay.
to get a sense of the animal's size and gait, almost like a detective, piecing together these clues.
That's incredible. So it was less about brute force and more about, I don't know, almost empathy, trying to get inside the animal's head.
Exactly. And you see that really clearly in one of his most famous cases, the Champawat Tigress.
The tigress responsible for over 400 deaths. That's terrifying, but also kind of hard to wrap your head around. How did Corbett even begin to tackle something like that?
Well, this is where that meticulousness really comes into play. The source material describes how Corbett relied heavily on the knowledge of the local villagers.
Oh, interesting.
They knew the terrain. They knew the tigress's patterns. Imagine this tigress had been terrorizing the region for years. Corbett realized, I think, that he needed those insights to even stand a chance.
So it was a collaboration in a way, not just Corbett swooping in as the hero.
Exactly, yeah. And even when he was on the hunt, it was this tense game of cat and mouse. The podcast highlights how he used everything from baits to strategic positioning, always adapting to the tigress's behavior. It wasn't a quick victory by any means.
It sounds incredibly intense, but he did eventually succeed, right?
He did.
Yeah.
But what's striking is that even in his writings, there's this sense of sadness, almost regret, at having to kill this animal. He saw it as a tragic necessity, not this triumph.
That's a far cry from the image of a gung-ho hunter, isn't it?
Completely, yeah. And it makes you think about how Corbett viewed these animals not as monsters, but as creatures driven to these desperate measures.
Which brings us to another chilling case.
Yeah.
The Rudraprayag man-eater. What was it about this one that stood out?
Well, this time, it was a leopard, and the terrain was very different, more mountainous and treacherous. The source material really emphasizes how this tested Corbett's adaptability. This leopard was incredibly elusive, its movements harder to predict.
So, while the Champawat Tigress showed us Corbett's meticulous tracking, the Rudraprayag case highlights his patience and resilience.
Yes.
It's like he had to become a different kind of hunter for each challenge.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is how he took the lessons from these harrowing experiences and applied them to something much bigger, conservation.
Right. He wasn't content with just hunting these man-eaters. He wanted to protect the wilderness that he knew so well.
Absolutely. And that's where his legacy really takes shape. He was a key figure in establishing India's first national park, later named after him, Jim Corbett National Park.
So the hunter becomes the protector. That's quite a journey.
It really is. It really speaks to this deep understanding of the interconnectedness of humans and wildlife.
Okay, but before we get too deep into his conservation work, I have to ask about those mysteries of the jungle that were mentioned. You can't just drop something like that and not elaborate.
Right. Well, throughout his time in the Kuman, Corbett documented all of these strange occurrences. Unexplained sounds, almost like ghostly wails, shadows flitting through the trees, things that even he couldn't quite explain.
Wow.
He even alluded to them in his book, Man-Eaters of Kuman.
So we're talking about the stuff of campfire stories.
More than that.
Yeah.
Corbett took them seriously. He didn't dismiss them as mere superstition. He genuinely seemed to believe that there were forces at play in the jungle that went beyond our understanding.
I'm hooked already. Let's dig into a couple of those specific incidents and see what we can make of them.
Well, there's this one account where Corbett describes hearing what sounded like a woman's scream
Oh, wow.
echoing through the forest.
Okay, that's creepy enough already.
It gets weirder.
Yeah.
He went to investigate, thinking someone was in trouble, but there was absolutely no one there.
Hmm.
And this wasn't just a one-time thing, you know. He mentioned hearing similar sounds on multiple occasions,
Yeah.
always late at night and always in the same area.
Did he ever offer any explanations for what it could have been?
He speculated about everything, you know, from unusual bird calls
Right.
to the wind playing tricks on him.
Yeah.
But he also admitted that some of these sounds just defied any rational explanation he could come up with.
So even Jim Corbett, the expert tracker, the man who knew the jungle better than almost anyone, was baffled by some of the things he encountered.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even in a world increasingly defined by, you know, science and technology,
Right.
there are still mysteries out there that elude our understanding.
And that brings us back to Corbett's conservation efforts. Do you think these experiences, these brushes with the unexplained, might have influenced his work in any way?
You know, it's certainly possible. Maybe encountering those mysteries deepened his sense of awe and respect for the wilderness,
Yeah.
making him even more determined to protect it.
It makes you think about all the things we still don't know about the natural world.
Yeah.
The secrets hidden in its depths.
Absolutely. And that sense of wonder, that recognition of how much there is still to learn, is at the heart of what makes Corbett so compelling. He wasn't just a hunter, he was an explorer.
Yeah.
A student of the wilderness.
But he was also a man of action.
Yeah.
He didn't just sit back and ponder the mysteries of the jungle. He actually did something to protect it.
Exactly. And his legacy is more than just Jim Corbett National Park.
Right.
His writings, particularly Man-Eaters of Kumon, played a huge role in shifting public perception about wildlife.
Right. It wasn't just a thrilling adventure story. It was also a plea for understanding and conservation. He wanted people to see these animals not as monsters, but as creatures struggling to survive in a world increasingly dominated by humans.
Absolutely, and he did so in a way that resonated with people. He wasn't preachy or judgmental.
Right.
He shared his experiences, his observations, and let readers draw their own conclusions.
And I think that's one of the keys to his enduring appeal. He wasn't just telling us what to think, he was inviting us to think alongside him.
Yeah, and to learn from him.
Yeah.
Because even though he lived in a very different time, the challenges he faced, the questions he grappled with, are still relevant today.
Like the conflict between humans and wildlife.
Exactly.
That's something we're seeing play out all over the world, even more so now with climate change and habitat loss.
Right. Corbett was ahead of his time in recognizing that these conflicts often stemmed from human actions.
Yeah.
Remember what he said about animals becoming man-eaters out of desperation?
Mm.
It's a powerful reminder that we can't just separate ourselves from the natural world. Our actions have consequences.
It makes you wonder what Corbett would make of the world today. Would he be horrified by the scale of environmental destruction? Or hopeful that we're finally starting to wake up to the need for conservation?
It's a question worth pondering, but I think one thing is certain.
Mm-hmm.
He would still be out there exploring, observing, learning, and urging us to do the same.
To not just see the wilderness as something separate from ourselves, but as something we're intimately connected to, something we have a responsibility to protect.
Exactly, and that responsibility starts with understanding,
Yeah.
with listening to the stories of the natural world, even the strange and unsettling ones.
And with remembering the lessons of those who came before us, like Jim Corbett, who showed us that conservation isn't just about preserving pristine wilderness. It's about finding a way to coexist with all creatures, great and small. It's amazing to think about how much Corbett's life mirrored that delicate balance, right?
It really is.
Walking that line between the world of humans and the wild.
He truly was, and I think that's why his story continues to resonate with us today. You know, we're still grappling with those same questions about our place in the natural world and how to live in harmony with it.
But honestly, I'm still hung up on those unexplained events.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think we'll ever know what was behind those strange sounds? Those shadows? Could modern science offer any answers?
It's tempting to think that with today's technology, we could go back to those locations and solve those mysteries.
Yeah.
Maybe there are perfectly natural explanations waiting to be discovered.
Right.
You know, like unique acoustic properties of the terrain or undiscovered species creating those sounds.
Or maybe Corbett was picking up on something more subtle, like the energy of the jungle itself, the echoes of ancient stories and unseen presences.
That's a fascinating thought, and it speaks to the idea that there might be dimensions to the natural world that we haven't even begun to understand.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like Corbett was tapping into a deeper level of awareness, a sensitivity to the pulse of the wilderness. It's almost like those unexplained events were a reminder that we still have so much to learn, even from a place we think we know.
Yeah, and that's what makes Corbett's story so valuable, I think. It's not just about those man-eating tigers or the conservation efforts.
Right.
It's about that constant questioning,
Yeah.
the willingness to embrace the unknown,
Yeah.
and the recognition that nature will always have the power to surprise us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Jim Corbett,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from this? What's that nugget of Corbettian wisdom that we should all carry with us?
For me, it's the importance of approaching the natural world with humility and respect.
Mm.
To remember that we're not just visitors passing through, but part of this intricate web of life.
And that understanding, that connection, should guide our actions, whether we're trekking through the wilderness or simply making choices in our everyday lives.
Exactly. Because ultimately, Corbett's story is a reminder that protecting nature isn't just about setting aside land for parks and reserves.
Right.
It's about changing our own attitudes and behaviors. It's about recognizing that the well-being of the planet is inextricably linked to our own.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And it's one that feels more urgent than ever in today's world.
Indeed. And as we face the challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss, we need more than just, scientific data and policy solutions. We need stories like Corbett's to inspire us, to remind us of the beauty and wonder of the natural world, and to ignite that spark of curiosity and responsibility within us all.
So let's all channel our inner Jim Corbett, eh? Explore with open minds,
Sure.
question our assumptions, and never stop learning from the wild world around us.
That's a great way to put it.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the life and legacy of Jim Corbett.
Yes.
We hope you enjoyed the journey and maybe even discovered a new appreciation for the intricate dance between humans and the wild.
And perhaps a little bit of that Corbettian spirit will stay with you, encouraging you to seek out the mysteries and marvels that nature has to offer.
Thanks for joining us on this adventure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep listening to the stories that nature has to tell.